Welcome back, Nerd Squad. In comics and films, many superheroes seem forced to sacrifice their lives for the greater good. Sometimes giving it your all while you're living just doesn't quite do it. Obviously, a lot of comic book hero deaths have us waiting for them to be resurrected. It used to be that only a few deaths were ever actually given the weight they deserve in comics, due to the fact that so many heroes just never stay dead. Throughout the years though, the rules have seemed to change in the comic book world, with meaningful deaths meaning less, and with characters who we honestly thought would be permanently gone getting resurrected. Today we take a look at some of these surprising superheroes, ones who we thought were gone for good but who somehow managed to make it back to us. Let's get counting. Number 10. Lois Lane. I hear what you're thinking, Lois Lane isn't a superhero. And you're right, she wasn't. Until the New 52 reboot led to her becoming Superwoman, after she started developing some of Superman's powers following his demise. The New 52 has been kind of a weird time for Lois. Her character was dramatically revamped while writers paired up Superman with Wonder Woman, but then still wanted Lois to sort of get involved. She connects with Superman during a fight with Brainiac where she becomes his servant, and gets telepathic powers as a result. She connects with Superman during a fight with Brainiac where she becomes Brainiac's servant, and gets telepathic powers as a result. Later on, after Superman's death, her and Lana Lang would then start to exhibit Superman-like powers, and Lois would adopt the mantle of Superwoman before she perished. It was a weird choice of the writers to introduce the character who many fans had missed, turn her into a superhero, and then just have her fall. Many weren't sure what to expect with her character, but then DC writers decided to try and wipe away all the weird things that had originally happened in New 52 between Lois and Superman by bringing in their pre-Flashpoint selves and having them merge with their post-Flashpoint selves. This was such a weird storyline for Lois that even I wasn't sure what was going to end up happening with her. Also, the first few months of the New 52 didn't have a Lois at all, which made many people wonder if we would ever see her character again. Number 9. Cyclops. We all love to hate Cyclops almost as much as we all love to love him, let's be honest. So when he died after exposure to the Terrigen Cloud's mist in the Death of X series, people weren't sure what to think. Do we love it? Do we hate it? How do we feel about it? After his almost immediate death at exposure, Emma Frost wanted to give him a more glorious death, and so created a telepathic projection of him, which she made face off with the Inhumans and win. This all happened in 2016, and it wouldn't be until 2019 that Scott would really return. Cyclops has of course had brushes with death in the past, but this was the longest time we saw him dead in the comics. Part of what allowed this to happen was creating a story arc that was based around his death, wherein Emma's depiction of him made the world see him as a terrorist. His time-displaced younger self was also around at the time, wrestling with the potential of what he would grow to be. So in a sense, it was like Cyclops was never gone. For a while I even suspected that younger Scott would just perhaps inherit his deceased older self's place and try to reboot and redeem his older self's image, but then that didn't happen. Number 8. Barry Allen. There were a few times that readers were actually surprised to see Barry Allen again. As a legacy hero, Wally West had adopted the mantle after Barry went into retirement, chilling out in the 30th century for about a 10-year period in our time. We saw him go into retirement in the mid-70s and wouldn't see him return until the mid-80s, when he was called out of retirement by the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. During that epic fight against the Anti-Monitor, we saw Allen perish as he disappeared into the Speed Force, never to be heard from again. Except he was heard from again. Sort of. While the comics continued to depict him as being dead, even showing him in heaven, his soul would revisit our mortal plane to help from time to time. Eventually, in the Flash Rebirth series, he was welcomed home, and it is explained that he was actually able to somehow escape the Speed Force and return to life. This would not be explicitly confirmed in the comics though until the 2009 Rebirth series, which means he was suspected deceased for over 20 years our time. It's a long time. Number 7. Iron Man. While we all now love Iron Man, mostly thanks to the MCU and Robert Downey Jr., there was a time when Iron Man was pretty hated. I mean, he's also been hated since then in the comics, but this was kind of the big catalyst event. I am talking about the Mar-vell event, The Crossing. This storyline saw Tony come under the influence of Kang the Conqueror, aka Immortus. As such, he was basically turned evil. In the end, he redeemed himself as one does, with a self-sacrifice for the greater good, and a younger time-displaced version of himself took took his place. This version would go on to be Tony Stark for a while. In a sense, it was like he never really left the comics, but this wasn't the original Tony Stark. And it wasn't until Marvel decided that they really wanted to make Tony cool again that they decided to resurrect our shiny Iron Hero that we originally knew. The events of the crossing happened in the mid-1990s, and it wasn't until the young Franklin Richards saved everyone from Onslaught in the early 2000s that original Tony Stark would be brought back. Franklin was able to merge the old Tony, who had perished, with the younger one we had known since he died in the crossing event. Number 6. The Green Lantern. In this instance, I am actually talking about Hal Jordan's Green Lantern, who in the 1990s got a pretty crazy makeover for his character. Hal was transformed into a villain following the destruction of his home, Coast City. It was later revealed that a demonic parasite embodying fear called Parallax had latched itself onto Hal, resulting in this change in his character. Oddly enough, the term parallax kind of refers to a different point of view or perspective, so the fact that the writers decided to go with that name for the demon sort of reveals that they just wanted to play around with the way Hal was presented or depicted. Hal did all sorts of villainous things as Parallax, including killing like a ton of people, but redeemed himself with some sweet self-sacrifice. Hal would later return as the Spectre, but would not be seen again as the Green Lantern until his 2004 Rebirth series. So he was MIA as this hero persona for over 5 years. And even when he did adopt the mantle again, not many trusted him, and I can't say I blame them. Many blamed Hal for the events despite his possession by Parallax, claiming you would have to have a great darkness within you to even be hospitable enough for the parasite. Number 5. Bucky Barnes. Much of Captain America's grief and remorse stemmed from losing his best friend and partner in action, Bucky Barnes. The story went that Bucky was assumed dead after being caught in a plane explosion. That was a story Marvel told since the 1960s, and it wasn't until the early 2000s that they decided to change their tune. It turned out that despite thinking for years that Bucky was dead and we'd never see him again, he was actually alive. Dun dun dun! He had lost an arm in the explosion but managed to survive. He ended up in the hands of the Russians and was given a bionic arm after being revived from a cryostasis. Bucky had no recollection of his past or who he was, and as such he was used by the Russians to be an assassin. He had a hand in training Black Widow, actually, going by the name Winter Soldier. It wasn't until his memories were restored to him by the Cosmic Cube that he would express remorse at his villainous past and turn hero once more, teaming up again with Cap. Aw, Bucky. Number 4. Jason Todd. After his brutal demise in the series Death in the Family, which would change Bruce Wayne forever, Jason Todd was thought to be gone for good. The character had never been widely liked as Robin, due to his teenage angst and all of his attitude, and yet for some reason, we now all love Damian Wayne. I don't know. I guess it's only cool to have attitude if you are a trained assassin and an undebatable bad to the bone bad boy.
Who are these other kids?
We're your worst nightmare. Elves with attitude.
Writers ultimately held a vote and decided, due to his unpopularity, to kill off Jason Todd, having the Joker be the one behind his murder. This happened in the late 1980s, and Todd would remain dead for many years. In fact, comic book deaths have always been a bit of a joke, like I was saying before, but Jason Todd was considered by many to be one of the few permanent deaths in comics, because his death was so meaningful for the story and for Batman that his resurrection would not really make any sense. This remained a steadfast truth for over 20 years, until, you guessed it, the early 2000s, a time in DC's history where everyone kind of got a fancy new introduction. It had originally been teased that Jason Todd would return as the villain Hush, but this was quickly revealed to be a false tease and psych out by DC. He would, however, return as a somewhat villainous anti-hero, becoming the new Red Hood. And as meaningful as his death as Robin was, this seemed to be a great choice by DC, as everyone pretty much loves Red Hood, and the role really suited Jason. Number 3. War Machine. An interesting and unexpected demise for Rhodey came about in the events leading up to Civil War II. During the fight against Thanos revolving around the Cosmic Cube, She-Hulk was taken out by a missile, and it was later revealed, a punch by Thanos. Direct punch. Ouch. And many thought she would be a goner for sure. But the death no one saw coming in this Free Comic Book Day 2016 issue was War Machines. War Machine took a direct punch from Thanos, which killed him. One could even argue that his death sparked the war. His current girlfriend at the time, Carol Danvers, mourned and mulled over the fact that perhaps the turn of events could have been avoided, as Inhuman Ulysses had predicted Thanos' return. This led to the divide between Captain Mar-vell and Iron Man in regards to how best to deal with these visions, which created Civil War II. That event actually ended up with Iron Man almost nearly getting killed by Captain Mar-vell, but instead ended up in a coma. Tony found out he had a sort of reset function for his biological system when he miraculously awoke from his coma, and suspected that this might be something that Rhodey would possess too, as someone who is just as integrated as Tony was in the Iron Man tech. Sure enough, in Invincible Iron Man Volume 1, Issue 600 from 2018, Tony was able to bring back Rhodey, meaning Rhodey was only gone for about 2 years. Number 2. Captain Mar-vell. We never expected to see Captain Mar-vell again after he perished from lung cancer that had developed as a result of breathing in a deadly nerve gas. That's right. You can be a cosmic hero from a far-off, technologically advanced planet and still die from lung cancer, apparently. Even the Kree don't have a cure or immunity yet. Wow. But after his death in 1982, we saw him brought back in 2008. Sort of. He was brought back, but not really. A Skrull was stuck in his form and set up as a sleeper agent with all of Mar-vell's memories. He believed himself to be Mar-vell until he realized he wasn't. This Skrull version would also perish. The mantle of Captain Mar-vell would go on to be adopted by Carol Danvers in Mar-vell's memory, and so we sort of see him live on in her. Number 1. Professor X. Charles met his end in the dramatically sad show-off between him and Scott Summers, who at the time was possessed by the Phoenix Force, and had turned to the Dark Phoenix in the process. Professor X calmly tried to talk Scott down, refusing to fight with him and assuring him that he just wanted to help, and that everything would be alright. In a shocking turn of events, Cyclops responded by killing Xavier. Cyclops responded by killing Professor X. This all happened in the Avengers vs. X-Men series of 2012. It was later revealed that Red Skull's clone had absconded with Xavier's brain with the goal of harnessing Professor X's abilities. This would result in a goose chase that would make everyone wonder if Professor X might possibly return somehow in the aftermath of this event. However, it did not, and instead resulted in an apprehension and what was seen as a final goodbye to the Professor and his telepathic gifts. Later on, however, it was revealed that a part of Charles' spirit was trapped by the Shadow King in the astral plane. When the X-Men discovered this, they seek to help free Charles, who was able to make himself a newer, younger body and return to the world of the living in a way, adopting the mantle of simply X in this new, younger form. This version of Charles, however, would not be successfully resurrected until 2018. Even 2 years without a Charles Xavier in my mind is just too long. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. I hope you enjoyed learning a bit more about some superheroes we thought might never return, but then they did. There are a lot of comic book deaths that many dismiss. I mean, every time Jean Grey disappears, I'm just waiting for the next issue to see how she'll be resurrected, or retcon resurrected in some cases. What are the comic book deaths that you have felt were the most meaningful? Are there any superheroes that have died permanently or gone MIA that you wish would come back? Let me know in the comments below. DC has a surprising amount that have just been phased out through reboots. And while you are on your way down there, remember to like, sub, share, and ring our bell so you get all the nerdiest of notifications. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and my name is Amanda McKnight. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.